Welcome to the Streets.mn podcast, the show where we highlight how transportation and land use can make our communities better places. Coming to you from beautiful Seward, Minneapolis, Minnesota, I am your host, Ian R. Buck. Today we're going back to my childhood neighborhood up on the east side of St. Paul to talk about the Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit Project. This is a companion piece to Tim Marino's article that appeared on Streets.mn last week, link to that in the show notes. And he's joining me here in the studio to help us go over the history of the project, highlighting the Purple People Coalition who are fighting for the project, and discussing recent developments. Let's jump in. It's been an emotional roller coaster, honestly.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Tim, can you tell everybody, briefly, your relationship with transit, and in particular, I'm thinking about, your schooling currently, right?
Yeah. So, first, my name is Tim Marino. I am an organizer with the Dayton's Bluff Community Council and member of the Purple People, a coalition on the east side we'll talk about more in a minute. But as far as my relationship to transit, I'm just somebody who grew up taking the bus a lot. It's either I'm biking or I'm bussing. Just as I've kind of grown up more, you realize that there's not really a lot of voices that speak up for transit users. I mean, there are some great ones. We have some great organizations in the Twin Cities, but
and a lot of those organizations are involved in the Purple People Coalition.
They are. Yeah. They are. And I definitely really appreciate them for doing it.
Are you trying to go to school right now for transportation planning related stuff?
That is the goal. We're working on it right now. I'm hoping to get into the U sometime soon, and I would love to work for some kind of Metro Transit or a group like that that's actually doing the work on this stuff. But for right now, I'm just a passionate observer.
Yeah, and longtime listeners will remember, I think this was the last time that you were on the show, was our episode about moving from one part of the Twin Cities to the other, because I had moved gradually from the east side to Seward, Minneapolis, and you moved from Brooklyn Center over to the east side of St. Paul. And that's when I got you connected with the Purple People Coalition, because I was like, Tim, these are your new neighbors. They're working on this great thing. It seems like it's right up your alley.
Yeah, and it's been really great to get connected with a lot of the community leaders over there and to, learn more about, what it means to be in community on a project. Mm-hmm. I think it's, it can be easy to be like, well, I have this idea and I really want to talk about this idea. And sometimes it's valid and sometimes you have to recognize that, your voice is one voice. Your experience is not something that's, experienced by everyone in the community. Right. And it's been a ton of lessons that I've learned through this, and it's been really exciting to see these voices come together and a coalition continue to get stronger and stuff, even with the challenges that have come along with this project. I'm still excited for the relationships that I see strong forming in our community, and hopefully we can get a good bus project out of this. Yeah
Beautiful sentiments all around. All right, so let's get into the history of the Purple Line project. Very briefly, I mean, allegedly this project has existed since floppy disks were popular. Allegedly. And so originally it was called the Rush Line Project. That was its code name. That was when it was a Ramsey County led project, right? And this is how a lot of flagship transit projects happen here in the Twin Cities, right? Is one of the counties will develop the idea for this thing. It has a code name until they then hand it over to Metro Transit, and that's when it gets its final name, that we as the public recognize. So I think the Green Line, right, was the Central Corridor project, put forth by Ramsey County and probably Hennepin County jointly. I wasn't around during that time, so I'm not sure what all the details are, but I believe the Green Line extension, the Blue Line extension, those both were Hennepin County led, before they handed it off to Metro Transit. If you want to debate whether or not this is a good way to develop transit projects in the Twin Cities, listeners, I would suggest you go and chat with Ian Gaeta. He's got a lot of opinions about this. And he's alluded to that in a couple of Streets MN pieces that he's written. So maybe we should have him on the show to talk about that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. But yeah, the Rush Line, it started, believe it or not, as a commuter rail line all the way up to Rush City.
And where is Rush City, folks?
A long way away.
Yeah, I say that it's 2/3 of the way to Hinckley.
Yep. So you keep going up on 35 or on 61, and you'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. I mean, a few of our projects have started like that. Like I know the Gold Line right now originally was first kind of thought about as maybe this will be a commuter rail line to Eau Claire. And then it ends up shrinking down as like, we start with this really blank sheet of something where they call the universe of alternatives. And so you can look at it and be like, well, maybe there'll be light rail here. Maybe there'll be a bus here. Maybe there'll be commuter rail. And then as things develop, we start to realize that, I mean, it'd be cool to have something going up to Rush City, but I mean, I don't think it would get as good ridership. I don't think it would, really serve as many people like in the community of St. Paul as much. Right. And so, through the 28 years that it has been developed and stuff, they've started to make changes.
Yeah. Various different levels of community engagement throughout that whole process, right? Different, I imagine different city councils and, they send representatives to the table to talk with the county folks and everything and, figure out what do we want this to look like. When I kind of became aware of the project, it had been developed to the point where they were envisioning it as a bus rapid transit line from downtown St. Paul to downtown White Bear Lake, mostly along the Bruce Venno Trail corridor, which notably, is an old rail corridor that Ramsey County bought from whichever private company owned it at the time. And they bought it with the express intent to use it as a transit corridor, right? And so that has been kind of a through line throughout this whole project is the county has felt like in order to keep their promises when they bought the land that like, oh, we really should be putting transit here on this corridor. A lot of folks who live along Bruce Venno Trail, when they became aware of the project, were like, wait, what's going to happen to the trail? Right? Like that is a scary change, for somebody who loves using the trail on a day-to-day basis. And so that was kind of one of the early angles of anti-Rush Line sentiment, I think, was stemmed from not wanting to have a transit line interfering with like this beautiful trail that we have on the east side. Honestly, I love the Bruce Venno Trail. It was part of my daily commute for quite a while when I worked at Harding High School. The Bruce Venno Trail, when it's on its like straight part that goes mostly north-south through the greater east side, like it is up on a berm. And it's like right behind everybody, like everybody's backyards kind of like butt up right against it. And so I think people didn't want to have, buses going through there, which are louder than bikes.
Yeah. And like I can definitely understand that too. Cause it's like, as someone who lived in the city all their life, like I still appreciate nature. I still appreciate kind of getting out of the city in the sense and being like, oh, okay, this is a peaceful place to exist in. I mean, I think most city dwellers can relate to those moments there. And, feeling like something that you've enjoyed for a long time and maybe you've taken walks on there with your kids or you've biked at it, a lot of times, and it's honestly, like for a long time, it's one of the few safe bike places that you can take a family on. And so it
feels like it's part of a network too, because it intersects with the Gateway State Trail, and both of them go to very different places. So like it expands bicycle and walking access a lot up on the east side of St. Paul.
Yeah, like even as somebody who grew up in South Minneapolis, like the Gateway Trail used to be like my favorite trail. up there with the Greenway. But like maybe I rated up a little higher because I didn't go on it as much, whereas the Greenway I went on all the time. So it's like, ooh, it's a little special.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of my favorite trails. And when it's right there with Bruce Vento, and you can just like, it just feels like so like just right away from the city. And it's just like, oh, it's here. Like I have a friend who lives just north of Maryland on Payne. Did not even know the Gateway Trail existed. Did not know the Bruce Vento Trail existed. And it's like right there. And they're like, this is by my house?
Yeah.
Like what? Like, and so like there's value in those spaces, but I can also understand the county's argument too, where it's like, I mean, if we didn't spend the money on transit for this, there wouldn't have been a Bruce Vento Trail. It still would have just been an abandoned railroad that, nobody would have enjoyed. And so it's a really tough balance. And, I can see how there's,
it's the danger of giving people something nice because then they want to keep the nice thing.
Oddly enough. Don't give people nice things. No, but like it's a tough balance right there about like, what are my future priorities? And I think like, when I first heard about the project being moved off Bruce Vento, I was a little disappointed because, like, I mean, yeah, I like the trail, but I'm like, oh, this is going to be another derailed project. And I think there's sometimes a little bit of, like, when people follow these transit projects, there's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be times where things move, things change. And then, like,
there's moving and changing, and we just need to make sure that it doesn't become like a death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, as I'm getting more familiar with the East Side, as I'm living there, as I'm experiencing this, I'm just like, yeah, this is the right decision. White Bear Avenue, it makes sense. It just makes so much sense.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Okay. So before we get to the White Bear Avenue stuff, the city of White Bear Lake, there was an election. A couple of city council seats changed. I think it might have even been just one. And the majority of the city council was against the rush line at that time. The city of White Bear Lake passed a resolution opposing the project. And from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of the city council members who passed that resolution, everybody thought that was just kind of a, like, we're making a statement. It's not going to affect anything, right? The project's still probably going to go through anyway. But surprisingly, the Purple Line project staff, like, took that into account and started making plans that didn't involve going up into downtown White Bear Lake. So we started seeing different possibilities presented by staff about, where could the endpoint be? Would it be at Maplewood Mall? Would it go to Century College? There was another some shopping center in like Vadnais Heights, I think, that I've never been to and had never heard before this project. And yeah, that put a lot of people back on their heels about like, wait, what's going on with the project right now?
Yeah.
Right. It felt like it radically shifted what the purpose of the project was going to be. Right.
Yeah.
And that's around the time that the Purple People Coalition got put together. So I've been on the Community and Business Advisory Committee for the project for quite a while because I worked at Harding High School at the time. I lived up on the East Side for most of my life. My parents are still up there, so I have a lot of connections there. There were several other members of the CBAC who were feeling like, wait, it feels like the project is in danger of really going off the rails, if I can use that phrasing. So we started chatting and formed this coalition to advocate, outside of the official Community and Business Advisory Committee and the Corridor Management Committee and whatever other committees, right? The project staff put together. We formed this coalition to start pushing for making sure that this project is going to be the best project it can be for the most people that it can be. And so here we are about to talk about what are all the stuff that the Purple People Coalition has been up to.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch a little bit on how it got taken out of White Bear Lake in the first place. Now, I wasn't a part of the community discussions or the CBAC at that time, but I've had discussions with people who were a part of it. I know we have members on our coalition who are very connected with nonprofits in the area and the community coalitions, and had a lot of community voices who were like, we need to bring this to White Bear Lake. It started as a streetcar town. That's the only reason White Bear Lake exists on there. That was the origin of it there. And when the talks came to bring it back, it really was, it stoked up a lot of people who used that as a fear campaign. There was one of the members of the White Bear Lake City Council got elected, was from the Center of American Experiment. And
great. That
is a very, if you don't know, a very, very conservative think tank. And they put a lot of pressure on it, talking about this is going to bring crime up here. This is going to make our traffic worse because you're going to have a bus coming every 10 minutes is going to make traffic worse. Like, it's going to change the character of our neighborhood. This isn't why we moved to White Bear Lake. And, yes, things are a change, but also like places like that, they need access from the city. They need people to come shop at their businesses. They need people who want to live there to, encourage more development there to build their property tax base. Like I think a lot of times suburbs, they feel like, okay, we're our own thing from there, but they're part of the organism of the city. And regardless of any other reasons for me, I don't like seeing when suburbs just try to like disconnect from what the city is and be like, we're better than you, we're over here. It always strikes me the wrong way. And especially when a lot of that comes from racism and classism. Purely. And so that
whenever I see that kind of thing popping up in suburbs, I want to give them the deal like, okay, you can reject this rapid transit project, but in exchange, we're going to take away your highway. I feel like that has to be the deal, right? Is like you can't go anywhere fast.
Yeah.
If you can't go there fast in a bus.
Yeah, no, for real. But it's a different mode for them. And it's like, oh, well, that's radical. Why would you do that? And so coming from there and just like seeing the Met Council say, okay, we don't want to fight that fight. We just want to stop it at Maplewood. Because unlike with other projects, like they don't have to listen to, there's no municipal consent for a BRT project. The Met Council could say, great resolution. We're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Right. Though there was some complications with like land acquisition that would have had to happen within White Bear Lake in order for the BRT to be able to function. And so like the city council did have some leverage there.
Yeah. And I'm sure it would have drawn off into a whole lot of court cases, and a whole bunch of lawyers who are way more informed on this can probably speak on this. Like I said, I am just a layman in these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and then like you said, as those things happen and this coalition is starting to form, I think that's what I really like to see in this project, because I know there are groups that support transit projects, but they're like, this feels really deeply rooted in how, like, who is showing up to the table. We have one of the East Side Business Association, ESABA, is showing up there. We have all 4 East Side St. Paul district councils showing up in support about this.
Yeah, so that would be Payne Phelan, Dayton's Bluff, Greater East Side, and
SECO, Southeast Community Organization.
And of course, Move Minnesota. Yeah.
And MICA, which is the Metropolitan Interface Council on Affordable Housing. And like, you don't really see that in a lot of other projects. And like, to see a coalition like that that's existing outside of the power structure of the Met Council and the Metro Transit in the county. And I think there's value in that, in just saying that we've seen like a whole lot of other groups organizing and advocating for their own interests and advocating against transit. And we want to do the same thing. We want to be a voice where people can support this, where we can make sure it's the best project that serves all of our communities. It can bring these district councils to the table. It can make requests from the Met Council and the project staff and say, we have certain things that we want to see this be better. We want to be your cheerleaders. We want to be the people saying, yes, we want the purple line, but we're not just going to sit back and take any project that is given.
Right.
Already I'm a fan of the purple line before it, but like now I'm just like, you see these communities that are just being like, yes, we want it. How many places, how many neighborhood organizations, how many business associations in the city are like, yes, we want the project.
Right.
There's a lot of other ones where it's concern and it's not because they necessarily just hate transit. Well, sometimes it might be, but it's because there's not a space for them to communicate. It's not a space where they can understand these things. By having these communities and these groups involved from a beginning point and coming to the project staff with a position of power, it really levels the playing fields, and it makes people feel there's more trust, there's more buy-in. Mm-hmm. There's still things we need to work on. There's still things that we need to advocate for, and there's still things that we want to improve about it. But I know that, like, for me, following a lot of different projects, that's an encouraging sign to see.
Yeah. So the project going from ending in White Bear Lake to, now Maplewood Mall is the likely terminus, right? That was kind of when my sense for what would be best for the project really shifted, right? When, like, the Bruce Venno Trail route made a lot of sense to me when this route went a long ways, right? But Maplewood Mall is very close to the downtown St. Paul. And so at that point, we started to think about, wait a minute, is Bruce Venno Trail really the best place for this bus to go? And that's, really the Purple People Coalition was the entity that got White Bear Avenue put back on the table, right, as an option. Long time ago, when multiple different routes were being studied, right, White Bear Avenue and Bruce Venno Trail were both studied, and they discounted White Bear Avenue. I think at the time, the formulas that, like, the federal level uses to determine whether or not they're going to contribute money to a project were very different. If the Purple Line had been moving along quicker than the Gold Line, we probably would have seen a very different project. Like, the Gold Line ended up being a project that has a lot of park and rides, as part of the project, because that was, like, the direction that federal money was advocating for, right? You had to have that kind of thing in your formulas in order to qualify for stuff. And now, under the Biden administration, very different story, right? We got project staff to start studying again the White Bear Avenue alignment, the route, with the thought that, okay, that is a business corridor. There's a lot more, it's a much higher density of housing and also of businesses, and that seems a lot more appropriate for a bus rapid transit route that isn't going far out of the cities. It makes a lot more sense. It seems a lot more similar to other transit projects that we have had in the core of the Twin Cities, like the Green Line, Central Corridor.
Yeah, and I think, like, the wisdom of that is coming even more true, after COVID. I mean, we don't have the same amount of people that are commuting into downtown, like,
right.
And that does change, the type of ridership you're going to get in a project. Like, when people are commuting into downtown, they're not as often really wanting to see what's on the way there. Like, they're trying to go downtown, they're trying to go home. And versus, like, where are the places that you can connect to in your neighborhood? Like, where are the destinations along the way? Where are the apartment buildings that people live at? Where are the bus lines that connect to this route and can feed into this and make it a whole network? And I think that, like, an element of that where I like it too is, like, being able to chain trips together. Mm-hmm. So, like, let's say that I'm coming back from Minneapolis on the Green Line going towards St. Paul, and I'm heading over there and I'm like, oh, I need to stop and get something. Okay, well, let me just hit Menards real quick on the way back, pick up something, and then I'll get on the next train that's coming, because it's coming in. Used to be 10 minutes now, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, oh, let me grab some food on the way back too. So I'm gonna stop at Dale and pick up something from Hooks or not Hooks. I forgot the Los Ocampo over there. And I might just go by the park on the way back and just chill for a little bit. Like you can take these trips and make these stops along the way in an easier way. Where like when you're in a car too, like it's easy because you can just be like, oh, I can park and I can go in there. And we don't think about that always in the same way with like for people who don't take transit, about that opportunity to just like stop, grab something, come back on and go.
Right.
It's all about origin and destination.
You need two things for that to work, right? You need high frequency and also you need a density of businesses, restaurants, parks, like things along the way, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that I kind of started getting excited again when we started talking about White Bear Avenue, was because it provides such a different opportunity for this project. And I think it is worth highlighting, right, that purple line, it's a color, right? It's not one of the BRT lines with a letter name, right? The arterial BRT lines, so that's the A line, C line, D line, coming soon is the B line, right? Those are all bus rapid transit lines that typically don't have their own right of way, right? They're operating mostly just on streets the way that your traditional city buses do, but they have a few other like treatments to get them to go faster, right? They have stops that are spaced out farther than most city buses. They have the really nice stations with like the paying before you board, so that you don't have to spend time like at the fare box when you you don't have a long line of people waiting to get onto the bus, stuff like that, right? But the Purple Line project it's not been diluted down to that level, right? We are still intending for this to be a bus route that operates primarily in its own right of way. So how's that going to work on White Bear Avenue? There's a few different possibilities, right? This is mostly going to mean just like bus lanes along the whole route, right? There's a couple of different ways that could look. It could be bus lanes on the outsides of the street, right next to the sidewalk, right? That's an arrangement that we see pretty typically for bus lanes in the Twin Cities. I am excited about, the studying of center running bus lanes. I've gotten to ride some center running bus rapid transit routes in like Indianapolis, right? They've got the red line. And I was really amazed at how narrow of a street they could fit bus lanes on when they used the center running model. That was like really cool to me. And the other reason that I'm like really intrigued by center running is because it seems like it would have more opportunities similar to what the Green Line did for University, which is making it a much easier street to cross for pedestrians, right?
Yeah.
When I'm crossing University today, I just look for, where are the entrances to the light rail platforms? And then that means that I only have to cross the traffic that's going in one direction at a time, because I have that platform in the middle as my like pedestrian refuge, right? So I think that center running would be a really cool feature for the Purple Line to have on White Bear Avenue.
Yeah, and that's one that I'm personally really excited for. Me and a few other members on the Purple People Coalition approached the project staff about saying like, hey, you guys ruled this one out pretty quickly. Why? Like, do we really need to do that? And there were a few assumptions that were made originally when it was ruled out. But we've had discussions with them about saying, hey, do we really have to have these assumptions going forward, going into this project? Is there any way that we can really, squeeze it in there in a better way? Because the other thing that's really key about like the D line, B line, stuff like that versus a Purple Line is that it gets the federal money to reconstruct the street. Yes, the B line is having construction on Lake Street, but that isn't the federal money doing that. Like they're building, like the stations are being built, with project money, but all the other improvements, that's the city and the county that are working on this. And so being able to have the opportunity to reconstruct one of the most dangerous roads in the county, that's huge.
Right.
For people that are in, urbanism space, you might have heard the term 4-lane death road. That is White Bear Avenue to a T. I think one of the members of our community, they found some information. I think, correct me if I'm wrong if they're listening, but I think the average speed of traffic on White Bear Avenue, if I remember right, was 47 miles an hour and the speed limit is 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's average. So are we talking about people who are going to be going 55? This is an area where there is density near there. There's businesses. There's a library that kids just hang out by. There's a senior living center that's right near it. That's a high rise. We have community that are living here. And this is a canyon in between from where you want to go from one side. And so, like you said, the thing that I personally really like about center running is that it doesn't feel just tacked on in a way. Like when there's side
literally
running
a
bus lanes,
central feature
yeah,
of the road, right?
yeah. Those side running bus lanes, they have right turns that use those. And when there's a spot where there's like cars are doing right turns, it's pretty easy for somebody who's in a hurry to justify, oh, well, my turn's in 3 blocks, so I might as well get over now and just, make my way over there or something. If there's something on the side of the road, if you have a delivery that's in front of the house, the delivery driver is just going to be like they do in a lot of bike lanes in the city. Oh, I'm just going to stop here for just a moment. They won't care. I'm going to run inside. And that all affects reliability. And for me as a transit rider, one of the most important things for, besides frequency for me is that reliability. Because if I'm worried about catching my next transfer, yes, the purple line might come every 10 minutes, but what if I'm transferring to a bus that only comes every hour?
Right.
And if I'm nervous, if I can't make that connection, now I have to leave an hour earlier, and that's lost time. So if I get to my destination an hour earlier, if I have to do that every morning or every day for work, that's a ton of time that you're really not able to provide into any other thing you want to do in life. So with something like center running, because it's in the middle there, another thing too is that yes, you have to cross the street a little bit to get to the station every time, but it's that shorter crossing distance. So you just have to cross that one car lane, one bus lane, both times versus crossing all 4 lanes at once.
And the key for me is I only have to look in one direction to see the traffic that's coming towards me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's something that's still, it's still to be determined. There are community voices on both sides of this issue, but I do have to say I'm glad that it got considered. I'm glad that it's actually being studied, that the information is being released to the public so that the community feedback can really influence this decision right there. And
I'm really glad that we have you on the coalition right now as well, because you have been bringing your experience as somebody who is studying to become a transportation, planner, that you've been able to reach out to folks that and be like, hey, let's get some concept drawings, some diagrams of the plot maps and whatnot, put together and demonstrate for the project staff, here's a possibility.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who threw together a rendering of what it could look like, because that's what he does in his job. He's a planner who makes renderings for things, and he heard about the idea of this and was like, oh, this is super cool. Let me just throw this together. And so there's an added level of okay, this isn't just some out there idea. It's visual. You can see it now, and it's tangible. And then even having discussions with people from Indigo, I reached out to someone from who was working on that project and was like, okay, so how did that go? What is your experience running that? What were the challenges with it? And then just hearing those stories from the people who would actually have to deal with the implementation of this on a daily basis, it's valuable there. And, they're hearing the direct feedback. They're hearing what the community thinks of something that's already built. Cause it can all sound great in a PowerPoint presentation in a picture, but it really matters about what's people's on the ground experience of these things. And so that was something that for me was really cool to be a part of with that. Yeah.
Another major thing that's being figured out right now is the arcade station.
Yes.
So Arcade Street is in fact a U.S. highway, correct? I think that's U.S. Highway 61.
U.S. Highway 61.
Yeah. The Bruce Fenno Trail at that point goes alongside Phelan Boulevard. You know, it goes underneath. It travels underneath Arcade, and the concepts for like what the station was going to look like have evolved greatly over time, and have had, I would say, probably the most community scrutiny out of any of the stations. So, you know, initially there were a few different ideas about, you know, okay, if we want the bus to be able to just travel straight through without having any like detours or anything, we'll have a station down next to Bruce Fenno Trail, and then there will be like an elevator and a stairway that goes up to the bridge. Right. So that would feel pretty similar probably to the West Bank station for the Green Line right here in Minneapolis, which, by the way, is the station that's closest to me for the Green Line. They had other concepts where the bus would leave the gully, right? It would come up onto Arcade Street, have a station like literally on the bridge, and then make a 90-degree turn on the bridge, and there was going to be a second bridge built off of the bridge to
connected to the existing bridge.
It was like a T-junction on a bridge where the buses would have a ramp that goes down back to, you know, the valley level. Wow, that what a concept. I cannot imagine that like ever existing in real life.
Yeah. And it would be one thing if it was like, if they were going to be reconstructing the bridge, because there's about to be a MnDOT project that's going to be redoing Arcade and 7th Street in that area. But they're keeping the bridge. So it doesn't need to be replaced there. But yeah, it's going to be an existing bridge that they're going to be adding. They were thinking about adding to something new on there. And then through a lot of community voices, people said, you know, we don't really feel comfortable waiting down in the gully there. And, you know, it's something where, like, I think, you know, it's important to remember that, like, people have different experiences as they're taking transit. You know, like, me as a taller white dude is not going to have the same level of, you know, comfortability or uncomfortability as somebody else. And so I think that, like, it's important to recognize that, like, things that we know as transit users of, like, oh, safety comes when there's eyes on the platform, when there's eyes on the street, when people can see what's going on there. Safety happens when you feel like you're not isolated in a certain area. And these are all things that, like, are a major impact on whether people feel like, I feel even comfortable using the stop, because if you don't feel comfortable using the stop, why do you want to stop in your area? Right. You know, you're not going to want to support that. Yeah. And so this is something that's really important to me too, because this is actually the closest stop to where I live. Yeah. So it's, you know, when the Purple Line gets built, if I'm still living in the same apartment, this will be my stop. And so there's been a lot of work done by the Payne-Phelan Community Council to really provide community engagement, to talk to their neighbors, to hold events, and to really just ask people, like, what do you think about this? What would you like to see? What would make you feel more comfortable? What would make this feel like your stop, not just something over there that I'm not using that. Right. And so through that, there was an alternative that was developed by Metro Transit, basically where it would come out of the gully a little bit, and then right before Arcade, it would duck underneath a bridge underneath Arcade, and then kind of go back to where it is. Yeah, and the station would be at that same level as Arcade, but it would be like, what is it, like 100 yards down from the intersection? I say maybe 100, 150, 200 feet. I don't know exactly the amount. But it would be a little bit set back from the intersection. Right. So if anyone's familiar with that area, there's the Y that's up on a big hill over there, and it would just be kind of like on the other side of that. So it wouldn't be as visible coming from Arcade as something that's right on the station. And I timed out like how long it takes to walk from the intersection to where the station would be, and I think it was like 60 seconds.
That seems like it's probably going to be the happy medium option, right? Because the other option that has been published was like have the bus go all the way up the hill into the parking lot of the strip mall there, have a station, do a U-turn, and then have to drive all the way back down to Phelan Boulevard. And that seems like it's going to like add too much time to the Purple Line's total trip.
Yeah, and I would say too that like as only one person of this coalition, I know there's people who have different perspectives on like what is going to be the best thing for the project there. Personally, for me, if it goes up there in a U-turns, like I would imagine as a transit rider, I would be, especially if I didn't stop there, I'd be irritated every time I passed it and be like, oh, we got to do this whole thing again.
It feels like what the 21 has to do when it passes by like the Midtown Global Market building.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Except like an even longer detour than that. Yeah.
Yeah. There is another option that is being proposed too. And so that one,
I'm super excited about this one.
Me too. There's a shopping center that's right across the street from Arcade there. And so there are in conversations with the people who own that shopping center about saying, hey, this is kind of an older building here. What if, we can redevelop this area, add affordable housing, and go through where the shopping center is, and then it just comes back down,
just one corner of the shopping center, right?
Yeah,
it would take out like one or two storefronts, probably.
Yeah, and it would kind of be like if you think of like a freeway with a diamond intersection where it kind of goes up and then it goes right back down, like on the side of it there. That's one where me personally, I would be really excited to see that be pursued right there because, you're like housing and transit go very hand in hand. And there always is concerns from people about displacement and gentrification with transit projects. And so to be able to have something that will directly add affordable housing as part of the project, and that's not just an afterthought, that will make the station be more like what the community wants it to be, it feels like a win-win-win. Now, there still is, the matter of the people who own that property saying, I don't know if we want to do that.
Right. It's the most complicated in terms of how many stakeholders there are to get it working. Yes.
And so, there's still going to be a lot of discussions about that. But this is something where our coalition is really involved in. And one thing that we really want to make sure that we fight for, what's the best option for the people who are using transit in this area, and not just have the easiest option be put forward. When we're talking about a project in excess of $400 million that is coming, a lot of it federal money, county money that's coming into a space, that has a lot of impact. This is something that once it's built, it's going to stay here for decades, at the very least. And it has an impact on how people move around in their community in that time. And so it's really important to make sure that it's done right. And I think that we want to make sure that just because we support it doesn't mean that be like, oh, okay, we don't have to worry about doing what they want. They're not causing problems. And, we want to make sure that like, yes, there have been concessions made to other places in the project that have caused more problems. We don't want to necessarily be causing problems. We just want to say we need this to be the best it can be.
So you've been talking about being really impressed with like how much community outreach the Purple People Coalition has been doing. Let's give some bona fides there. Let's show the receipts.
Yeah.
So what kinds of community outreach events have we had? There have been a couple of like stationary community events, right, hosted at a specific spot. So we had the Get Out the Gully event hosted at the YMCA near the Arcade Street Station, where the Arcade Street Station will be, to engage community members in deeper discussions about, what would we want this station to look like. We had an event at Cups and Cheers, which is on White Bear Avenue, to, get enthusiasm around the project. I don't remember everything that was being presented there, but there were maps of like the corridor. People, folks had chances to write stuff down on sticky notes and, put them all over the place. One of my favorite forms of, community outreach there. Paris has been doing a heck of a lot of work engaging business owners, along, because he's involved with ISABA, the East Side Business Association, and he's been engaging a lot of the White Bear Avenue Business Association members as well. Move Minnesota's been organizing a lot of canvassing sessions. I know we were talking about Metro State University. Thank you. And of course, Move Minnesota's bread and butter. We've got petitions. Folks have been signing petitions to, express their support for the project.
Yeah. And, we're about to have another event at Cups and Cheers coming up soon. Well, probably
by the time this episode comes out, it will have been yesterday.
Yes, but so I guess now we'll say we had, talking in the future, another event at Cups and Cheers. And the first one we're focused on, just kind of introducing a lot of people to the project. And then we brought out a lot of people from the Iowa High Rise that is just off of White Bear Avenue. And we're talking about their experience. There's, a lot of elderly people living there. And, what are your experience crossing the road? We heard things like, we've heard people get hit at that intersection. We don't feel safe crossing at White Bear Avenue, even with a traffic light and a walk signal. Regardless, even worse if there's not one. And so, just having those voices, bringing project staff out to that place just so they can hear the community voices directly, and just, reaching our networks to bring them directly to the staff. And like you said, they had, a bunch of maps there. They had, different people talking about what the project means to them. What are the different points of discussion coming up? How can people be influenced? And I mean, even what is the Purple Line in the first place?
Right.
It's a lot of people still don't know what it is.
We almost forgot the parade.
Yes.
The Purple people had a float in the White Bear Avenue parade. I forget what exactly the name of the parade is, but big community event. Looked like a lot of fun. I was really sad that I didn't get to go.
Same.
They gave out purple lollipops and stuff. Mm-hmm. That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, just little things like that. And it's just, connecting to the events and the resources that are already in our community and reaching those directly. In having conversations with business owners on White Bear Avenue, because there is a lot of genuine concern about what does closing down White Bear Avenue for 2 years mean.
Right.
Some people have had bad experiences with light rail construction, like on the Green Line. Yeah. Some people lost their businesses during that time. Some people, even with there being displacement funding there, for some people it wasn't enough, or they had a difficult time accessing it. And so, what can we take from there to learn and make a better experience here? Now, on one hand, a 2-year construction period is easier than a 4-year construction period.
Yeah.
And that definitely helps things out. But we're also still talking about a business corridor that is in a low-income area, that doesn't have the same resources, that doesn't have the same access to lending sometimes, or the same, money saved up in their pockets to be able to survive some of these things. A lot of the business owners there are really directly serving certain communities, like the Hmong community or the Hispanic community, and they are lifelines for them. They're grocery stores, they're places of food, they're places of connection. We don't want to see the project come through, they get moved out, and then the community feel is changing in the area. And so one of the things that we're really focused on as a coalition is really centering anti-displacement work, centering money that's funding for business mitigation. It's something that the Blue Line Extension has done. They got $10 million from the state to do anti-displacement work. And, to start that out with the Green Line, they got business mitigation funding. How do we make sure that we don't forget about that while we're doing this project?
Right.
If we want business owners to feel like this is their project too, in the same way as people living near Arcade won't feel like it's their project if they can't feel like they use the station, a business owner doesn't want to feel like it's their project if they don't even know if they're going to survive this project.
Right.
And so part of the discussion is saying that a lot of them don't like the way White Bear Avenue is right now. They do recognize that this needs to change. They recognize that it's not safe. They recognize that sometimes people don't feel comfortable walking to their place from there. They can understand that new transit riders can bring new business, but it's making sure that they can be engaged and they can start saying how this, like, instead of just saying yes, no, there's more complexity than that. It's how do we get to a yes? How do we make sure that this serves us? How do we make sure that we survive through this?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, how do we make sure that businesses can stick around, but also that we can change a lot of the strip malls that are there into something more like, pedestrian friendly and oriented towards, the transit experience, right? The strip mall that we were talking about at Arcade, like that is a golden opportunity to be able to add housing while also building some specific infrastructure for the Purple Line, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of the White Bear Avenue corridor, right? Like, the Purple Line itself is not going to directly be touching a lot of those strip malls, but like, how do we encourage better land use, and what does that look like while also maintaining, like, keeping businesses around?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those parking lots of those strip malls are not used. It's a lot of empty space. Like, I have yet to see that Seeger Square shopping center at Arcade even a third of the way full. There's just not that demand for all this space, and there is demand for new housing. A lot of the housing stock in that part of the city is very old. It's not the greatest quality sometimes, and it's we still are in a housing crisis. We still have people who need more places to stay, and so ensuring that we do have affordable housing that's centered in these discussions and that's brought along with that, and that can be featured in some of these redevelopment talks. Like right near White Bear, there's a big empty lot that a whole bunch of food trucks be around and stuff. And it's just been sitting like that for a long time. There isn't market demand to build something there right now. If we build a transit project there, that changes the dynamics of what becomes realistic for a company to want to put in there, or another organization to want to say, hey, let's provide housing for people right there. Let's build more units and stuff that are near these businesses so that people can walk to those businesses. A friend of mine, he moved to New York a little while ago, and he was like, oh, everyone always says New York is so expensive. But it's like, besides the housing,
right?
Everything I can pretty much get for the same price, and sometimes cheaper than Minneapolis. And he's like, I realize like why people care about density now. It's because there's enough people going to these stores, going to these businesses, that they don't have to charge exorbitant, amounts of things to have a huge profit margin. They can make it cheaper. They can make it more affordable for places, for people to come and visit. And so, that's part of the discussion over here, is how do we ensure that, we can have new development that can add more neighbors to our community, that can, enrich our culture, enrich our community on the east side, and help it grow. We are having the Heights right near the project, about a half mile away, that is going to be adding over 1,000 housing units. A lot of those are going to be affordable. It's going to be adding a lot of industrial jobs. It's going to be adding new community nodes. And
was there new transit as part of that project?
Network now, Route 61 is going to be rerouting there.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to go all the way to Century Avenue. We'll see if it happens, but it's still in the community engagement process.
Sure.
Being able to kind of create more of that connected corridor in that area, and to see development happens that still doesn't leave the businesses behind, is something I really want to see. I want to see more new units that people can have, housing that doesn't have, rodents in there, that doesn't have, housing that is really, leaking the air in the winter and super cold, and, doesn't have like AC built into it and stuff. That's a value for people. That makes people want to stay in a community longer when they have housing that they like.
So, Tim, what the heck is going on in Maplewood?
Maplewood.
Oh, my God.
So, if you are not aware, recently, Maplewood had a resolution that they passed, basically saying 3 things. First, we like transit. Transit is good. Okay, great.
I hate it when people start that way. It makes me real nervous about what's coming next.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I like transit too. Awesome. We can just stop right there and we'd be perfect, right?
Yeah, no buts about it.
But the second resolution they passed was saying, hey, we do not want the Purple Line and the Bruce Vento Trail. Okay,
fine.
We agree with that too. Great. Can we just leave it there?
Yeah.
And then they passed a third resolution saying, we do not want the Purple Line on White Bear Avenue either. So
they want it in the sky. We want flying buses.
And so at this point, pretty much means that they do not want the Purple Line in their community.
Right.
It was a very close vote. It was a 3-2 vote, and there is an election coming up that this is going to be a central issue in the Maplewood City Council election. So things may change after November. There could be a new vote that changes the dynamics of what Maplewood is supporting. Once again, like we had talked about with the White Bear Lake situation, they do not have a direct veto on the project.
Right.
Met Council, the state can still say, we want this to happen. It could still happen.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of the Ramsey County commissioners, right, who shaped this project and then handed it off to Metro Transit, they are still very much 100% behind the Purple Line. And it seems to me like they are not going to take any of Maplewood's BS here.
I would hope so. And I encourage people who are listening to reach out to the county commissioners, to reach out to the Met Council, to reach out to state legislators, because it's down in the hands of politicians at this point. Whether it continues or not, there's going to be pressure on both sides for this. A lot of the reasons that they were opposed to it is they said it's going to drastically change White Bear Avenue. And I'm like, we need to change White Bear Avenue. Once again, it is one of the most dangerous roads in the county. It's frustrating to me to see how ridership numbers can be used as a weapon too.
Okay.
Because when we're coming out of COVID, we're still using the federal formulas from pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. Some of these federal formulas haven't been unchanged since the Trump years. And these are still relying on saying people just want to take transit to downtown.
Yeah.
And they're also looking at it and saying, okay, there isn't as many people using the bus today as there were in 2019, which is true. And they're also looking and saying, well, in 2019, we weren't having massive growth every year of our transit system, which is true. So they're looking at that and saying, okay, so transit grows at a steady rate. So let's put that into today's terms and imagine that it's going to keep growing at a steady rate. So in Maplewood, they were saying that between now and 2045, there would only be 400 new transit riders in Maplewood, which I cannot see that being at all remotely possible. Now, people might say, oh, you're just biased because you take the bus. I would say that looking at the ridership numbers for our BRT this year, the growth that's happened between 2023 and 2024, the percentage growth, would already be more than those 400 new riders in 1 year. And we're talking about 21 years out. You're also looking, even in the notes, the thing that they conveniently left out was Metro Transit said what could change that is if they had more development along that corridor.
Yep.
Maplewood, as one of their goals, from hearing from one of the council members, was to add another 10,000 new residents in the city. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to put these 10,000 new people living in the city? A lot of times you want to put them near transit lines. That's going to provide more growth, but they can only model what they know is going to happen. They can't necessarily just speculate. And so if these formulas were adjusted more to the context that we live in today, where we see more people using transit every year, we see our recovery that's happening, we see more people wanting to take transit around their neighborhoods instead of just commuting to downtown. We see, go on bus routes in the Twin Cities. A lot of them, they're pretty full. Mm-hmm. You provide better access for people, you'll see more ridership. So hopefully we will see action that will bring the city around, or other partners that want to keep this project going. As a coalition, we're hoping to continue doing what we were before, make sure this is the best transit project it can be that can serve the most people as possible. Mm-hmm.
And reaching out to people in the community to engage them on all of these things. Yeah. All right. So Tim, you're going to keep fighting the good fight.
I will.
I'm right there with you. Yeah. And we've got a great group of purple people who are dearly beloved gathered here for better transit. I love John Slade and all of his Prince references.
It's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show, Tim.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Streets.mn podcast. The show is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, non-commercial, non-derivative license, so feel free to republish the episode as long as you are not altering it and you are not profiting from it. The music in this episode is by Eric Brandt and the Urban Hillbilly Quartet. This episode was edited by Jeremy Winter and was hosted and transcribed by me, Ian R. Buck. We're always looking to feature new voices on the Streets.mn podcast, so if you have ideas for future episodes, drop us a line at podcast@streets.mn. Streets.mn is a community blog and podcast and relies on contributions from audience members like you. If you can make a one-time or recurring donation, you can find more information about doing so at streets.mn/donate. Find other listeners and discuss the episode on your favorite social media platform using the hashtag StreetsMNPodcast. Until next time, take care.